Natalie, can you introduce to our viewer who you are and what's your work?
Yes, so I like to study the science of happiness and really explore with people in general sort of what holds them back from actually being happy in their day-to-day lives. A lot of the time, it's the fear of making changes or the fear of just looking within and thinking about whether we are even happy. I like to also talk about what really is happiness. So that's kind of the genre of my business right now.
Great. So, Natalie, this is a very good topic you are working under. It's very important because some of the people, when you embed in the businesses, you don't have like a resource, you don't have like a partner, you don't have a strong mind. Sometimes you find yourself, you fail because of that, the stress. Can you tell me a little bit about what business means for you and how to maintain business means for you as well?
So I think business always needs to start with an idea. So sometimes we think that our idea won't go anywhere, or we think that other people have done it before. So what makes us any different to anyone else? So I would encourage people to get beyond that fear and that self-doubt and trust their instincts and say, you know, there is no other you. So no one can replicate or be you. You are your own unique self. The other thing that is very helpful is understanding what the gap in the market is currently with the topic that you want to talk about. So what makes, you know, what you're saying relevant to a specific target audience, what makes what you're saying unique. I think it also involves a lot of research into what other people are doing or what other people are saying. And then you sort of coming in with, as I said, like your own unique voice and way of doing things. When you talk about business, what's also really important is to understand that anything new that you start takes a very long time before you can see any type of success with it. So patience is really, really important in the beginning. And I think also a support network is very important. As you say, it can be quite scary in the early days or even, you know, a few months in. And to have a very supportive network of people around you who want to rally around you and who you trust is very important.
Yeah, go, Natalie, go. Yeah, go, continue.
I think also you need to really understand, as I said, like that it really does take time. And along the way, you're going to make mistakes. You know, you're going to fail at things. Things aren't going to work the way that you wanted them to work out. And that's really normal. It's a normal part of the process. No one gets it right the first time. And even if you do, I'm sure there are lessons that you can still learn along the way. So it's just having that very realistic outlook of, you know, what it actually means to sort of start your own business or start on your own is really crucial.
Great. So, Natalie, based on your background, you work for a long time. We read a lot of about your career, your experience. You've been involved in some companies, and one day you decided to work on your own. Tell us about this journey. How hard was it for you to make that decision that, okay, this is the time for me. I got enough experience. Now I want to work for my own.
It's a great question. So this is the second time I've gone out on my own to start my own business. The first time was when my daughter was just born. And previously, as you said, I was working for a very large global company and sort of traveling all the time and working very long hours. And obviously that didn't fit with having a small baby at home. So in that case, it was really out of desperation that I knew I couldn't sort of work in my current profession, but I still wanted to do something meaningful with myself during the day. So that kind of came out of again, like being in an environment where I saw other people starting their own businesses and being a success at it. And, you know, why couldn't I do the same? So again, it did have that element of risk, which it always does. And then the second time, it was really, again, I think it was very much around what, you know, was post-COVID. a lot of us were working from home for quite a few years, and I wasn't finding meaning anymore in that kind of environment. And I really missed the connection with people and, you know, sort of that day-to-day kind of like passion with the role. And again, it was born out of just sort of a change of lifestyle, I would say, to find something different. And again, it wasn't like the idea came to me and then all of a sudden I was working in this business. It was a journey that I went on through research, through life experience, through talking to other people and understanding what they were going through, that I then learned that perhaps there was something to talk about, that people did find, you know, what I was sharing with the world, people could relate to that. And then the business kind of grew from there. So it was a bit of a different journey the second time round. The first time I would say I created something from scratch. And I would say this time I'm doing the same, but it's more around my own personal journey has led me here rather than sort of filling a specific need.
Great. So the support is very important when you want to go into your own journey. Your husband, your brother, your sister, your former colleague, they are the factor key, they are the trigger for your business to move forward. So
Yeah.
how was difficult for you to converse your husband, your neighbor, your family that, yeah, this is a time for me to go into this business?
Yeah, I think this really reminiscent of the name of the business, which is feel the fear and do it anyway, because none of this is easy. You've got to feel the fear of moving away from kind of a very predictable life of, you know, working for someone else and having that salary come in. And I guess, you know, the business in itself is you're just an employer. You're not the owner of that business. It's very different to kind of having something on your own and things being very unpredictable. I think I always say you need to announce to people what you're doing. It has to be, you have to announce it to yourself and you have to announce it to other people. And that takes a lot of confidence, to say to your husband, you know what, I've made this decision that I'm going to be doing X. And I need you to understand that it will probably take a bit of time to kind of get up to speed and on the way. And that means that you've got a very open relationship where you've said maybe what the risks are up front. And you need that other person to really give you that space to build something, because it doesn't take 5 minutes to build a business. It takes a very long time. And, you know, again, this self-doubt thing I think is very crucial, because a lot of people aren't going to understand what you're doing and they're going to have a lot of questions about it and they're going to find it very strange, or, you know, why would you do that when you had, you know, a very kind of cushy salary? And you've got to be ready to sort of answer a lot of those very scary questions. So I think it's really about being around people that are positive, that uplift you, that encourage you, and that even if they don't actually fully understand what you're doing, it doesn't matter. It's just that they're there on the journey with you and they're rallying around you to support you, I think is very important. And I think a lot of us, especially women, when we're at home and our role very much is around the household and children, it's very hard to imagine who's kind of going to pick all of that work up if you decide to sort of start something on your own. And I know that mindset really prevents a lot of women from making that leap. And there are ways around that. You just have to be quite creative, and you know, you do need the support of your husband or your partner in those situations.
Great. So, Natalie, tell us a little bit about your experience. What was the moment you said, okay, I think this is the time for me to come back in the work. I should stop this because I feel like it's not moving on. And how did you overcome this decision?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these decisions don't happen overnight. And I think it's sort of, you know, it simmers away inside of us for quite some time before we actually take these leaps. And again, I mentioned COVID because I think that really changed everything for us. And specifically, I was based in Australia during that time, and we were just working from home for so long, which I just found really isolating. And I think it really impacted. I used to work in HR, and I think we were used to being around each other all the time, and we were used to being very front on with the business and seeing people every day and it being a very social environment. And I think to sort of be at home on your own in front of a computer screen is just not the same. Like it just I didn't feel the same passion that I did previously in that kind of work. And I was sort of in my early 40s and I just wasn't happy. I was kind of looking around me and going, it's just not, I don't feel what I used to about the kind of work that I'm doing. And I've always been very work oriented and very motivated by my work. And I realized that it wasn't just my work, it was sort of my surroundings that also weren't bringing me the joy. And it was very long hours and I wasn't seeing my children enough. So it just I didn't feel fulfilled. I didn't feel this sense of joy that I used to. And I guess that's why I started questioning a lot of my life and questioning, what really does make me happy, because, I've been raised to think that X, Y, and Z was going to make me happy, and now it's not. So what will? And I needed to go on this very, difficult and painful journey to start to figure out a lot of those things. And I think I gave myself that space. Part of that journey was also moving countries, which it's not for everybody, but it worked for me. And I think that was a very hard thing to do, but it forced me to sort of reflect on my life. And then it sort of turned into this passion project of mine, which is, really studying happiness and what brings us that kind of joy each day. And then helping others on that journey as well is now my mission in life.
Great. So, Natalie, how hard was for you to convince people that happiness is something we build it ourselves? Happiness is something we trust ourselves.
Yeah, I think most people, I would say, don't give themselves the permission or the time to even stop and think about these things. I think now we're obsessed with being busy. We're moving at such a fast pace that we don't allow ourselves that time to reflect. And I think that, most people find it really difficult to hear the things that I talk about, because it means that potentially they need to make changes to their life, or they need to go inside. But I do think that, there are a lot of people who are questioning their life at the moment and want that direction and want that support and need those answers, because they know that their life isn't bringing them joy, or that even in the early 20s, people know this, or even younger, but yet they're not quite sure what's actually wrong. And I completely agree with you that it does come from within, this idea that we're chasing something all the time and that we need to tick the box on all of these things, get that job, buy that house, marry that person, have those kids. It's not actually about that. It's about those everyday things in our life that can bring us joy. And we need to stop obsessing with the future. We need to stop trying to chase these goals all the time. It's not about the goal. It's about, today, what's going to make me happy? What are sort of those little things that are going to bring me joy? And I still think most people are on that journey. I don't think I've convinced people of that just yet.
Great. So, Natalie, we learned a lot of things during the COVID. We were stuck in house. There was no job. Some of the jobs shut down, and it was difficult to get facility in terms of taking care of the family because of the COVID that destroyed many lives. So, what is the impact of digital in that time where we don't have a facility to go outside like for a job? How internet and digital was really helpful for we as workers?
So COVID just changed everything. I mean, I don't think we will ever go back to how we used to be, like mentality wise. When you're in a situation, especially where we were in Melbourne, in Australia, we were in lockdown for so many years, that's not going to be a quick fix. You fundamentally change the way that people are working. I think there's pros and cons with that, as you say, that, from one hand, it was very flexible and people were allowed to kind of see their family a lot more. But on the other hand, to just sit at a computer screen all day long and not interact with people and not have that basic human connection that we all really need, I think is problematic. And for me personally, my husband and I were both kind of in office jobs. We were at home for years, and I still think we're feeling an impact of that. And I encourage him now, like he works for a global company, for example, and I encourage him to travel and at least see his team, even if there's not like a local office that he can go to, or go work in a workspace, because we still need that desperately. You can't replace human face-to-face contact. And while Zoom has led to great efficiencies in time saving, and I think we've come better at like managing how many meetings we have in the diary and the time that we allocate towards all of those meetings, it's not the same. We still need that face-to-face interaction. So I think there's been pros and cons. And I still think we're figuring out post-COVID, like what the magic formula is. I don't think that we've cracked it yet. And I know that a lot of businesses are still struggling with that. And then on the other hand, you have people that love working from home that refuse to come back to an office. It's been so long, they've gotten used to it. And they don't want to give up like their lifestyle and their flexibility and the fact that they go to yoga at 12 o'clock in the day. And, they don't want to do those things, or, even the way that we dress has changed, or it's very, very complicated. So I think we're still working that out.
Great. So Natalie, let's come back to Africa. Africa became more interesting area for businesses, and African minds is evolving more and more to businesses now. So can you tell me a little bit about how to be out of the fear can help Africa to boost its businesses? Because the mentality, what we learn about Africa, it's a poverty, it's a war, it's a lot of misery stuff. What you have to say about Africa in terms of businesses? What ahead?
I think you can do a lot from home, having said what I just said previously. Like, I think we're in a really good period of time where there's a lot of free ways to start a business. Because I know it's very scary in the beginning when you just don't have the funds. It's almost impossible to start something without even a little bit of money. But there are so many free platforms right now that you can go on, like LinkedIn or Instagram or Twitter, and literally build your business online. So I would encourage people to face their fears and start looking at something from home if they're limited in funds, or there's ways that you can kind of get around it. And as I said, we're in this era right now where we've never been before, where you've just got so much opportunity on the internet to build something, whether that's a training program, whether that's kind of live webinars, whether that's sort of sharing content. It's all available to you at the moment. I think you just have to feel the fear and do it anyway. is really my tagline. And I think, I'm not saying that all of those things that you said about Africa, I mean, I'm not a subject matter expert on the country. I wouldn't even say that I was, but I think there's always a reason not to do something. Wherever you are in the world, there are always people trying to say negative things. Try and focus on what you can do, what you are in control of, and what is at your disposal, rather than all the things that are wrong with your situation. And I would say that wherever you are in the world, that is always going to be your challenge. And again, try and surround yourself with positive people who are going to uplift you and encourage you to continue on with your idea. I think that is absolutely crucial. If you're around negativity and people who say that that's not going to work, or that, the naysayers, then you're going to start to believe that. And I would also say, maybe don't necessarily talk about what you're doing with too many people in the early days. Talk about it when it's something, and talk about it when you're 100% sure of what it is. Select like 1 or 2 or 3 really people that you trust to advise you along the way, your close circle, and keep it really close to your heart in the beginning before you sort of share it. I think they are really the key pieces of advice. But I honestly, there is so much online that you can learn, that you can research. There are podcasts endless podcasts where you can learn from people who have done it previously. That would be my recommendation.
Great. So Natalie, it's very difficult to find a good advisor.
Yes.
People that they can coach you on you into your journey so that you can succeed. Today with the internet, we have like LinkedIn, we have a lot of social media that can link people. Sometimes people are fearing, they say, okay, I have some profile, I don't know who's behind that profile. Maybe it's not a
Yeah.
good person, maybe it's not a right person that can take me where I want to go. So how people can identify a right person so that they can go to good music, good experience journey?
Look, I think none of this is kind of 100%, but I think one of the also important things is, yeah, you will make mistakes along the way. You will get burnt. You will think that you can trust one person and you can't. And that's part of the process. So it's accepting and knowing that it's not going to be smooth sailing the whole time, but you learn from these experiences. It's very important to know what the journey is going to look like. There are going to be ups and downs. I think my first recommendation would be to get on the podcast, to start listening to experts in the field that you're interested in. There are so many podcasts around, and just listen to them every day. And you start to learn a lot from these experts. And most of the time, if you've got a podcast and you're on Apple Podcasts, they've been vetted. So that would be my first step for people, is to start researching that way, or start reading books, from experts in the field. You can do courses online as well. So you can start learning. You've got LinkedIn Learning. You've got, people who download their courses from Harvard and all of these prestigious universities. You can access those courses online for free sometimes and find them on YouTube. So that's what I did in the beginning as well. I started studying online. And then I think you can sort of start looking at maybe 1 or 2 or 3 influencers on these social platforms that have a huge following, where that they're sort of the real deal. And just start learning. Just start learning from people's profiles and the content that they're sharing, and research is really important. And then once you feel comfortable, you can start to open up to people through these social platforms. Also look at who they're connected to. It's very important to see who their connections are. Are they stable connections? Are they honest connections? And I would keep those ties very, very close. I wouldn't start branching out to too many different people. That would sort of be my recommendation.
How do you feel when you help someone to achieve his goal, and you help someone to overcome his fear in the business? How do you feel?
Well, I have to say that it's a great question, because why am I doing this? What's the why of all of this? It's just, I really believe in this mission because it worked for me, and I would love to show others the way. I'm very passionate about it, because I know that so many people struggle with this. They struggle to deal with stress. They struggle to find coping strategies. They struggle to really be happy at the end of the day. And I get a lot of enjoyment when I can really just even give small pieces of advice or small changes that people can make. But I think also where I also find happiness is, helping people understand what they're feeling is really important, because often we ignore our emotions and we just live in survival mode all the time. And then our body catches up with us and rejects this stress. And that's when we end up in crisis. So if some of these things can be avoidable, it would be great. And I love helping people understand like what they're going through. I think that's part of the problem. People don't really understand what's wrong. They know that something's wrong. They can't understand what it is. And then they don't know how to get out of it. So fear is a part of all of those parts of that process.
Great. So Natalie, how people can identify himself? I'm going through fear, I'm going through trauma, I'm going through stress, I'm going through something bad that can take me maybe very far. How?
I think it's one of the first sort of indicators of that would just be feeling like a sense of malaise all the time. So where you used to find enjoyment or joy in something, you're now just feeling really flat often. The second thing would be just, that feeling of stress all the time, kind of waking up with that stress, not feeling like you're able to relax or cope, kind of having like a very short fuse where you felt like before you were able to kind of cope better. And another really huge indicator is just feeling very disconnected from people. So I used to, when I went through this, like people would talk to me, I couldn't even hear what they were saying. Or when I used to sit in front of my children and they'd talk to me about their day, I'd be like, I can't even hear or process what you're saying to me because my brain is like so overloaded and it's so full of stress. I couldn't even tell you what you're saying to me right now. And that would have been with friends, that would have been with family, that would probably be with colleagues as well. So they would be, and I think the other thing is people always push it off. So they say, I know I'm really stressed, but I've got a really busy day at work and I can't really talk about that right now. Your health should never be pushed off to like a later date. Your health needs to be dealt with now, not, in 10 years from now. And most of these people will get into a situation where they won't have a choice because their body, as I said, will just end up saying, I can't cope with this level of stress anymore. And they'll start to get sick in whatever way that will come out. So there are many different like illnesses that you can get from stress, and they'll just start to see their body shutting down, which is a big shame. So that would kind of be the worst case scenario. But I really do feel that not everybody prioritizes their own well-being, and this is part of the problem. They push it off and say, well, I've got a really busy day today, I can't deal with that right now. Well, actually you yourself is the most important person to be dealing with before everything else. That should be coming second, third and fourth.
Okay, so Natalie, thank you so much for all those advice. So how you can come out of your fear and I can say a mess that can take you deeply in your fear, how to come out from it?
How to come out of fear and make change, is that what you're asking?
Yes, exactly.
I think it's just, I think you need to sit with yourself. I don't think we give enough time to ourselves. So I think we're obsessed with being busy, and that's really just living in survival mode. That's actually not living. So spend some time with yourself and your own thoughts so that you can sort of start to work through what is actually going on for you. I think writing is really important as well. Like writing down what you're afraid of, what you're going through, what you're feeling, like have a personal journal is really clear and important. And that is another way to offload what's going on. And then I think you really need to ask for help. Very important to ask for help. So if you are in sort of a fear state, you need to ask for help, like whether that's going to see a therapist or talking to a close friend or getting an advisor or someone to sort of make that first step to change isn't always easy for people. And you need to actually get someone to help identify what you're actually going through. I think you've also just got to start something. So the first step is really difficult, but you just have to start. And even if that's like small steps every single day, I used to wake up at like, my fear was, when am I going to work? That was my fear. So when am I going to work? When am I not going to impact the family if I do work? How am I going to do this all? I have this really great idea, but when am I going to do it? And I used to wake up every day in this panic going, I know all of these things I'm passionate about, but when am I actually going to do it so it doesn't impact the family? So I used to wake up before everybody, like that hour in the morning, sort of between 5 and 6, and just start writing stuff. All of my emotions, I started writing them out. So I would offload to the world and I would offload what I was feeling. And then I used to sort of do it an hour at night as well once the kids were asleep. So even if that's only 2 hours a day or an hour a day, you're at least starting something. You've actually just got to start, because the more you push it off, the more you create more anxiety over the situation and more apprehension.
Great. So what's the powerful of reading, writing, and sharing happiness with other people surrounding you?
I find it to be the best therapy I've ever had is writing. I just love it. I find that it's my therapy to write and share with the world how I feel. Then I love it when what I write, people can relate to it. So I build that connection with people online, virtually, to say that, you know, I'm helping you, you're helping me, we can relate to each other. So I love it when people say that to me. I can totally relate to what you're saying, because it makes me not feel alone in what I feel. And then that makes that other person not feel alone. And to create a platform where everyone feels comfortable to kind of share how they're feeling, for me, brings me the biggest joy. And I'm there. I can be the one to start the scary conversations. I'm happy to be that person. If it then brings this movement of people together, would be what my wish is.
Great. So you are for so you accept the idea of creating a network for sharing writings, reading together to help people to
Yeah.
overcome their stress and to be
Yeah.
happy.
And I
Okay.
think it's also giving people hope, because I think when you're going through a difficult time and a crisis, you know, where's the hope in that? Like, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? And I want to provide people that hope to say, maybe you just misunderstood what happiness was. You know, this is what happiness is, and here's the hope in that, because it is very achievable.
Okay. So Natalie, what is happiness for you? What is happiness for you?
I think it's really being happy with what you have in life. So reflecting, what is actually going well for me? What do I feel grateful for? So every night I write in my journal 5 things that I was grateful for that happened to me that day. Whether that was going out for lunch with my son or my daughter, whether that was going for coffee with a friend, whether that was making a really nice dinner for my family and them really enjoying that dinner, or whether that was, you know, doing a great post on LinkedIn that everyone really enjoyed. Like, what are those little things during the day that bring me joy? And I think it's very much about stopping to obsess about the future all the time. We don't have control over the future. We have control over what we're doing in the moment. Okay, I'm sitting, I'm present with you now. I'm really enjoying this conversation. This conversation is really bringing me happiness because we're having a
Great.
great chat. And
Great.
now I'm feeling really joyful. So when I write in my journal tonight, I'm going to mention this because this brought me happiness. That to
Okay.
me is happiness.
Great. So, what is the powerful of talking to people when you feel sad, when you feel like you are fearing something, when you are not happy? The powerful of talking to others.
Again, it comes back to connection. You know, when we talk about what are basic human needs, water, food, and connection. If you look at the happiest countries in the world that get, you know, the top 3 on those indexes, because there's a sense of community, there's a sense of connection. We're generally social beings. We need to connect with people. So that's essentially, you know, that's why the connection is so important. That's what brings us happiness in that moment, is that specific connection. And I
Great.
think when people feel alone in what they're feeling and they think that they're the only one going through something, that can kind of make them even more stressed and anxious. When you connect with another person and that person validates how you're feeling, you don't feel as alone anymore, because you say, okay, other people, you know, feel what I feel, or they validate your feelings and you feel heard in that moment. I think it's really important.
Great. So, what will be the advice you will send and the strong message you send to all those people they are having fear because of nothing is moving on their side?
I think you need to take some time off from whatever the project might be. So another point about business is, when it's your own, you know, it's with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. When you're working for someone else, you can take a break because it's someone else's problem, essentially. When it's your own business, it's only really on you. And that's a very deep sense of responsibility. And it's very emotionally draining. And often we do ruminate at night and think about our business all the time. And then we do build anxiety around it. In those situations, I would recommend taking 3 or 4 days off from whatever you're doing and just completely take a step back. and do something nice, like that's totally distant from your work, and come back to it with renewed energy. And I think you'll find that the fear kind of dissipates.
Natalie, what is the powerful of taking care of your colleague, your partner on business as a boss? We have sometimes a boss that doesn't respect the employee, it doesn't give a value to the employee, it doesn't promote his employee to succeed. Sometimes you work with people, they don't want to give you the opportunity to be also an employee. That means to learn and then to set up another business that can also help other people. What is the role of a success? The question would be, what is a succeed boss? What is a successful boss?
Okay, so there's definitely very bad leaders out there. I'd say there's more bad than good. And I'd say the characteristics of a good leader is, are you making your employees feel like psychologically safe in the workplace? Do they feel like they can bring their full personality to work every day? And do they feel like they can be authentic at work? That is, to me, the most crucial thing, because when you create an environment where the well-being of your people is safe and healthy, you're going to get the best out of them. The second thing I would say as a leader, like, are you working to people's passions? Are you giving them opportunities and work that is aligned with what they're passionate about and what their strengths are? When you work to people's strengths, you get the best out of them because they're happy with what they're doing. If people are happy with the work that they're doing, they're going to be giving you a very good outcome versus unhappy. And I think toxic environments, I would just say, get out of there. I wouldn't even say spend another minute in a toxic environment. I would just say to look for another job. You're never going to change the toxic environment. You're going to really start to find you get very depressed and stressed in those environments. And sometimes they can be very long to get out. It can take you time to get out of them. So if you do find yourself in one of those situations, I would say immediately start looking for a new role. But I would say also with leaders, they need to be very selfless, because when you're leading people, that's actually a job and that's actually a responsibility. You need to take that role very seriously. And I think it's about other people, not necessarily about yourself when you're a leader. You're supposed to be creating an environment where you can promote from within and not always look elsewhere to bring in new talent. You should be building the talent that you have. So that would be sort of my key characteristics.
Natalie, we are going to hand off our emission, our talk. Can you give what would be your last word to our viewer about emotional, about fear, and about a good leader? To be a good leader.
So I would say, let's just go through each of those. I just want you to pay attention to your emotions, because your emotions are telling you something. And I want you to pay attention to start listening to those emotions. So if you've been someone who was like me, who lived in survival mode for a very long time and ignored their emotions, that's never going to end well. So please start to pay attention to those emotions. The second thing around fear is it's really normal. It's really normal to feel fear. That doesn't mean you shouldn't do something to make change just because you are in a state of fear. I think you need to acknowledge that you're in fear, and start to make small changes every day, whether that's like putting your phone away in the morning for 2.5 hours rather than looking at it straight away as you get up. That's already a big change that you're making in your life. And I would say around great leadership, it's not an easy job. So you have to be up for that challenge, and you have to take that role very seriously. And you have to really enjoy being a leader. So you need to understand that it's actually a big responsibility to lead people. So I don't think it's for everybody. But leadership is something you can learn. So that's the good news.
Natalie, Herman, we thank you for your time, for sharing this experience, this strong word to our viewer. We hope to see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me today. I really enjoyed speaking with you.